it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to give you 7 things you can copy from my serve to help improve your serve. Now first, I'm going to play my serve for you 5 times in a row in real speed, real time, so you just get a sense of what my serve looks like, and then we're going to break it down. Now, the first thing we need to talk about is the grip. Now, the proper grip on the serve is called the Continental grip, and that's where you take the base knuckle of your index finger and your heel pad, and you're going to place them on panel number 2, which rides up the entire grip on the right if you're right-handed. And if you're left-handed, you're going to be on this side, panel number 2 here, with the same base knuckle and heel pad on your left hand. Now, one of the indicators that show you're using a Continental grip is when we zoom in here, you can see that the racket is slightly open. See how the racket is ever so slightly open? And that means that the strings are facing slightly up to the left as a right-hander. Now, you don't have to do the Milos Raonic where the strings are literally facing straight up. But I do want you to think of having the racket slightly open, and that just, again, is indicative of using the proper Continental grip. So using the proper grip is going to help you do everything else. So make sure you've got the grip right, and then everything else will fall into place as you work on the serve. The second thing is to have a coil. And all this means is, yes, you want your body weight going back and forward, but you also want to be rotating. Notice here we can see my back, but then as the serve begins, now you can't see my back. Now you just see my chest. So I want you to, again, film yourself. And I'm always in my videos asking you to film yourself so you know what you look like. I just gave a private Zoom lesson to a gentleman last night, and he said that he started filming himself based on my recommendations, and he couldn't believe what he saw. So don't just try to imagine what you look like or try to feel what you look like. Film yourself and know what you look like and compare yourself to my videos. So make sure that you're coiling, just like a baseball pitcher, just like a football quarterback. You want to coil so you can uncoil in the serve. So have some rotation where you're rotating your body away from the net. Look at Federer, and as he tosses the ball and how his body is rotated toward the back fence, toward the back camera, and you'll get the sense of what you should be doing on your serve. The next thing is it's really important that we create the environment for racket speed. You'll notice that my arms are coming up at a similar time. So my hitting hand and my tossing hand are coming up at a similar time, yet my tossing hand is leading. Why do you want to do this? Because this creates the environment for racket speed. This isn't golf where we can hit the ball either today or tomorrow. We can hit the ball whenever we want. Like the ball's just sitting there. Tennis, and just like baseball or softball, it's a game of timing. We have to time our swing, not just swing fast, but we've got to be on time. And so when you toss the ball slightly ahead of your racket, where the tossing hand comes up before the racket, you can see they're both coming up, but I'm leading with the tossing hand. This creates the environment for racket speed, meaning I'm going to have to speed my racket up to be on time. I see a lot of recreational players lifting their racket up first, and then they lift the toss. The problem with that is you're going to force your racket to have to slow down to time the hit, rather than getting the toss up slightly first and having the racket go up with it, but trail. So film yourself and make sure that your tossing hand is coming up before your hitting hand. Now, speaking of the toss, a big mistake I see players make, and I get people, and I welcome it. Send me a video of you serving or hitting a forehand or backhand, and I'll make a video possibly on my channel showing an analysis of you and what you can do to improve. I watch so many players tossing the ball way too high. You'll notice how low my toss is. Like I'm basically hitting the ball at the peak. Now I have a very low toss, but it is as high as I can reach. I'm jumping, I'm getting off the ground. I don't care if I toss it 20 feet in the air. This is where I'm going to contact. So I don't want to toss super high because again, it's creating the environment for racket speed. If I lead with the tossing hand, as I mentioned before, but then toss low, it forces me to swing fast. That's an easy way to speed up your serve because you have to swing faster just to make sure that the ball doesn't drop too low. Well, what you can do with this app, Coach's Eye, here's what the symbol looks like. You can use this timer. So let me show you how long it takes for the ball to leave my hand. So you can see that timer begins when the ball leaves my hand. So I'm hitting the ball a little under a half a second. So I was helping someone on YouTube the other day and their ball was in the air. It left their hand and it took 1.1 seconds for them to hit the ball. Way too long because the toss was so high. It was difficult for him to time the ball. So I really want you to work on tossing the ball lower than you normally do. As long as you're in the 0.4 to 0.5 all the way up to like 0.8 seconds, you're within that range of acceptability. If you film yourself and then you put the timer out like this and then you don't hit the ball, let's look at the timer, until now, that's a problem. That means your toss is way too high, the ball's accelerating as it's dropping, and it's too hard to time. It also means that it's going to be easy to have an erratic toss because the higher you toss, the crazier the toss can get. Work on tossing lower than you typically do. Now, if you're hitting at the peak, near like kind of the way I am, then don't lower your toss. It's already where it needs to be. But see if you can lower the toss. It's an easy way to pick up racket speed. Now, let's talk about the racket path. You'll notice as my tossing arm is rising and I'm lifting my racket at the same time, you'll notice my strings are pointing down. Not all pros do this. You look at an Ash Barty. You look at Pete Sampras, my favorite player of all time. They're not lifting their racket up in this position. So I'm not telling you that you have to get into this position. But if you're someone who goes into the waiter's tray position and typically your racket's back here and your strings are facing up, then this is a great thing to copy. This is what you see Naomi Osaka doing. This is what you see Gael Monfils doing. This is what Roger Federer does. You watch these players and their strings are pointing down. Nick Kyrgios, their strings are down in this position. The racket is pointing off to the side of the camera and the strings are pointing down. This is an easy way to get rid of your palm up waiter's tray serve. When you toss the ball and lift the racket, have your strings down, having the tip of the racket pointing over off to the right of the camera. You'll see my elbow is pointing behind me. This is what Jeff Salzenstein calls elbow the enemy. This gets you primed and ready to use an amazing throwing motion. Getting your palm down, getting your elbow back. And this is what then allows you to bring the racket in over your head with your strings pointing down. This is what I call knock off the birthday hat, where your racket comes in over your head. If Roger Federer hit an actual serve wearing a birthday hat, he would knock off the birthday hat. No different than Naomi Osaka, no different than Sam Groth, fastest server in the world. Not all the pros hit the birthday hat. I agree, and I understand that. But for players searching YouTube, knocking off a birthday hat with the strings, by the way, with the strings pointing down, as you can see, my strings are pointing ever so slightly down. And like Roger Federer's not in this position. Roger Federer is in this position here. His strings are facing directly off to the side. That's great. Milos Raonic copies what I shouldn't say Milos Raonic copies me. I copy Milos Raonic, where he has no idea who I am. The strings pointing down and the racket's coming in over my head. When you bring the racket in over your head, like you're knocking off a party hat, like you're knocking off a birthday hat, what that then does is it helps you to bring the racket around on edge. And that's the next idea. It's a great idea based on the Continental grip to bring the racket around on edge, which means it looks like I'm actually going to hit the ball with the edge of my frame. My strings are facing off to the side. Film yourself and just try actually serving where you actually hit the frame. And who knows where the ball goes? You might even swing and miss. But lead with the edge up toward the ball. That's what forces pronation. And pronation is just simply prior to contact, if you're right-handed, your strings are facing off to the left, and after contact, your strings are facing off to the right. That is going to be the fastest way you can move the racket through contact. Strings facing left, strings facing right. Look at your serve. Work on this. Shadow swing this. Have the strings face to the left and to the right so you can have 180 degrees of change in the racket face. Just prior to contact and just after contact. You'll notice when I'm in this position with my strings facing off to the right, my hand is slightly higher than head level. You want to be doing this at a high point with the strings facing off. I don't want you, all the way down here by the time your strings face off to the side. It's a quick snap at the top with your forearm, and that's going to give you a tremendous amount of racket speed. And the last thing I'm going to show you in this video is notice my tossing hand is in my hitting armpit. I watch so many players copying the Dominic Thiem and Andy Murray and Andy Roddick, left arm shooting behind them. I don't want you to copy that unless you are tucking, just like you look at an Andy Roddick. He tucks that left arm in against the body as he's striking the ball. Why? Because that actually slows the body down to accelerate the racket. And I hear so many players say, no. When you tuck the tossing arm in, that speeds your rotation up to help you spin faster. You don't want to spin faster on the serve. You want to coil and then begin uncoiling. And right here, you want to slow the body's rotation down. When the body's rotation slows down, it becomes a reactive break, and it actually accelerates the racket. If you keep spinning as you're hitting, that doesn't help you accelerate the racket. Slowing the body's rotation down helps you accelerate the racket, and tucking the left arm in against the body is a great way to do that. And don't take my word for it. Just look at a slow motion video of Roger Federer tucking his left arm in, and you'll notice his body rotation slows down. You can see that. My body is rotating, where here you see my chest, here you see my back, but the rotation, the rate of rotation slows down as I'm hitting the ball. Why? Because when I slow my body down, it transfers energy and allows my racket to be a reactive break, and my racket accelerates into the shot. So make sure you've got the Continental grip, and an easy way to make sure of that is to have the strings facing ever so slightly up. Make sure you coil on your serve. Turn and coil. Make sure that you lift your arms up together like Roger Federer, but lead with the tossing arm. When you lead with the tossing arm, it means your racket's got to go fast, and that's a good thing. We're creating the environment for racket speed. Make sure that you're tossing pretty low. You don't have to toss as low as I do. That's fine, but it's got to be within a range of acceptability. Don't just chuck the ball super high and think that's going to help you with your consistency and racket speed and serve speed. It's not going to. The lower the toss, I promise you, you are going to be forced to swing fast, and you're going to increase how fast you serve. Make sure that you're bringing the racket in over your head. Bring the racket in over the head. Knock off the birthday hat if you're someone who uses the waiter's tray. If you don't have a waiter's tray, then don't worry about it. If you're more of a conventional, let's say, Ash Barty service motion, where her racket is on edge at this point with her strings facing this way, then she just brings the racket behind her head. She's not knocking off the birthday hat the way Osaka and Roger Federer do, and that's fine. I would never change Ash Barty's serve. I love her service motion, but she doesn't go palm up, so she's fine. But if you're someone who goes palm up, have the tip of the racket facing off to the right with the strings pointing down, and bring the racket in over your head, and work on being on edge. When you bring the racket on edge, then you're going to have to pronate to make contact, and you keep pronating, and then your strings face in one direction prior to contact, and then completely in the other direction after contact. And then last, tuck your tossing arm in against your body. I tell people that if you're right-handed, the back of your left hand should smell like your right armpit. Let me just allow you to watch this serve again over and over so you can see what I have talked about in this video again at full speed. So if you go out and film yourself on court serving and work on these ideas, there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.